It's been exactly 3 months since my baby brother, Colton, died. I still blame myself no matter what my parents tell me. I was watching him that day. He was my responsibility, and I failed him. All of these things that have been happening to me recently, I think, are the consequence from that day. The day I let my brother die. It was a Thursday night, the night that he died. A day almost exactly like this one, except it wasn't stormy outside like it is right now. No, in fact, it was a beautiful day. That's the one thing I can almost be happy about. To know he left this world on such a perfect day. Thursdays, both of our parents worked, so being the older sibling, I was tasked with watching him. Colton was a very easy kid to watch. Don't get me wrong, any little brother is a bit annoying, but he wasn't at all that bad. I have friends who have younger siblings that are sent straight from hell, I swear. Colton was only 6 when he died. Growing up, it was really hard to connect with him. Being 10 years older than him didn't help. If I'm being honest, there were points in my childhood when I was jealous of him. He was always the baby in the family, getting all the special treatment. At least, that's what I thought when I was younger. Now, I just wish that he was alive. I love Thursdays. I basically had the whole house to myself, besides Colton being there. I could listen to music as loud as I wanted, play video games for as long as I pleased, and could say any swear word that crossed my mind. I obviously wasn't the best babysitter. Most of the time, our parents would just leave us pizza money, so I would order the food, give him his share, and that was it. As far as I was concerned, my job was done after I fed him. Most of the time, he was fine with that. He just liked playing in his room alone with his toys and coloring books. I know it was too early to tell, but I think he could have been a really great artist one day. The kid loved to draw. Even at that age, it was his whole life. There's a small river not too far from our house. Sometimes, on those days, I would take him here. It's only a 5-minute bike ride away from our house. I would always have to keep an extra eye out for him, though, because he didn't know how to swim. I remember one afternoon, I took him there and he begged me, saying, "Mikey, will you please show me how to swim soon? You always say you will, and I really want to swim with you and your friends this summer." I sighed and responded, "Yeah, all right. I'll teach you sometime, but not just yet. It's too cold out. Maybe in the spring when it gets a bit warmer, and you and I have the whole day to show you." Colton looked up at me with a toothy smile. "You swear, Mikey?" "Yeah, buddy, I swear." On that Thursday, the day Colton died, he asked me to go down there with him. I said no. See, I had planned the perfect day consisting of pizza and video games, and I didn't want any interruptions. "Well, what if I just go by myself?" Colton suggested. "I can go and you can stay here. Please, Mikey, I just want to throw some stones in the water." "No, seriously, man. Mom and Dad will kick my ass if they find out that I let you go alone," I replied, getting agitated. With a defeated look, he sighed. "Come on, please. I swear I won't get into any trouble. They won't even—" "No, Colton," I interrupted. "That's my final answer. Just go draw or something, please. I just want some hours to play some games before they get home. Can't you just be, like, normal for a few hours?" I think back to that day, to that exact conversation, and I just wish that I'd been nicer to him. I wish I could take it all back and just spend that time with him. Maybe then he would still be alive. No, not maybe. I know he would still be alive right now. About an hour later, he came back to my room and asked if he could go play in the front yard. I didn't believe him at first, thinking he was just going to use the opportunity when I wasn't around to go to the river. Annoyed, I looked at him and said, "Look, dude, I already told you. No about going down there. Don't even think that you can trick me." No, Mikey. I swear I won't. Look, you can take my other walkie-talkie, so you know where I am the whole time, Colton interrupted. See, this isn't your average walkie-talkie. It was a weird spy brand one that they sell to kids at local retail stores. There's a built-in mic and camera on it. That way, you can't only just hear the person, but you can see them too. Fine, but you better just stay in the yard, you promised? I asked. Colton's grin was huge. Yes, Maggie, thanks. I swear I'll only stay in the front. Seriously, man, stay there. I don't want to have to look up and down the neighborhood for you. And you better answer me back on the talkies when I'm on here, I scolded like older brothers do. Racing out the front door, he replied with an, Okay, I'll be back before dark. Just come back when the streetlights go on. That's before dark. Will do, see you then. And just like that, he was gone. Walking out there with a Spider-Man t-shirt, red Converse, and blue denim jeans. I think back to that moment, and I wish I could just scream for him not to go and stay inside with me. But you can't take back time. An hour or so passed before I called Colton on the walkie-talkie. Pressing the side button that turned on my mic and camera, I spoke into it. Hey, you still there? I'm here, Colton replied. I could now see his face on the small screen covering the front of the walkie-talkie. From what I could tell, he was still in the front yard. All right, I said. Just stay there. I'm going to go take a nap for about an hour, but I'll be back to check on you. Don't get into any trouble, all right? Colton laughed. Yeah, sure thing, Mikey. I swear I'll be fine. Just like that, I put down the walkie-talkie and laid in bed. I woke up at around 7 p.m., which was far too late. I'd passed out at around 3, and I had no intention for sleeping as long as I did. And that just sort of happened. It saddens me to admit, but I forgot all about him being outside when I first woke up. Instead of checking on my baby brother, I began to frantically clean the house. I knew our parents would be home in about an hour or so, and my mind was just preoccupied with the task. It wasn't until I was in the front yard taking out the trash that I realized he wasn't there. Dropping the trash can, I'd let out a swift "oh shit" before calling his name out frantically. I looked throughout the house and the front area, running back inside and grabbing the walkie-talkie, yelling into it. Hey, Colton, you still there? Hello? Dude, don't play right now. I swear I will tell Mom and Dad. Silence was all that was met. Seriously, man, this isn't funny, I continued while making my way into the backyard. I even tried changing the channels on the walkie-talkie, hoping that he somehow changed the station by accident. But I was still met with no response, no matter what station I tuned to. That's when the thought to check the side of the house for his bike came to me. I ran as fast as I could. There, where his bike usually sat, just sat an empty patch of grass. I knew where he was at. The fucking river, I thought to myself. That's where he was at. He must have taken his bike down there when I was still asleep. But then why wasn't he answering me back on the walkie-talkie? There was no time for that, I thought. I jumped on my bike and pedaled as fast and as hard as I ever did my entire life. The whole trip there, thoughts were racing in my head, like, why wouldn't he answer? Maybe his walkie-talkie died, or what if the signal just didn't reach out that far? With one hand on the handlebars and the other on the walkie-talkie, I kept calling back until I got to the river. I jumped off my bike and ran as fast as I could, yelling out, Colton, hello, where are you? I came to the foot of the river bed where his bike was laying down, near the shade of an old oak tree. I knew then and there that he must have been close. I ran into the shallow part of the river, my jeans now soaked, screaming his name out. Over and over again I called, but nothing. Just the sound of the silent forest and the river area. That's when I looked over my left shoulder and saw the walkie-talkie floating upside down in the stream of the river. I looked over my right shoulder and my heart stopped. Lying face down at the deep part of the river, near the big rocks of the peaks through the water, was my little brother's lifeless body. I fell to my knees, a sharp pain growing so deep at the pit of my stomach, a pain in which I can't even begin to describe. I cried out a short whisper like, "Oh my God," before continuing, "Oh God, oh my God, oh my God." With each passing moment, my cries grew louder and louder. The next thing I knew, I'm racing over to his body and dragging him out of the river. I laid on the side of the channel and wept. I don't know how long I sat there with his lifeless bodies in my arm. He was cold, still very cold and still soaking wet. I must have been there for a long time because at some point this couple saw me, or rather heard me, from down the road sobbing. They called the cops and that was it. That's how my parents found out. The investigators determined that he must have taken his bike down there when I was asleep, and at some point decided to try and walk on the top of the rocks near the deep end. He must have slipped and fell right in. He didn't know how to swim, and nobody was around to help him. I know what you're thinking. This is all my fault. If I had been watching him like I should have, or had taught him how to swim like I promised I would, he would still be very much alive today. I know my parents must think it's my fault too, though they would never admit to it. They've been making me go to this counselor ever since, but it's just useless. It was about a month or so later when I began to hear something coming from the walkie-talkie Colton had given me. It was so odd-sounding. I was sitting at my computer desk at the time browsing Facebook, and I began to hear the static-like noise. At first I thought it was maybe like something that was wrong with my headphones, but I took them off, and I could still hear it. That's when I looked in my desk drawer where I had put the walkie-talkie Colton had given me. I picked it up and pressed it against my ear, realizing that that's where the source of the noise was coming from. I was utterly confused, since I hadn't touched the thing in about a month. Not after that day. I knew the other walkie-talkie that Colton had given me broke when he fell into the river. Plus, the police had detained it after collecting his body, so I assumed that the other one must be sitting in some evidence locker. I thought maybe it was just picking up some random signal, so I changed the channel that it was connected to, and just like that, the noise was gone. 2 days later, I was in my bed, trying to get some rest. Ever since Colton died, I haven't been sleeping too well. I guess it serves me right. But on this particular night, I began to hear a noise. I wasn't sure what I was hearing. At first, it was static. Given my experience 2 days prior, I knew where to look. My desk drawer. I opened the drawer, and right as I did, it just stopped. Dead silence. I was confused, so I picked up the walkie-talkie and switched it on and off. I tried changing the channels, even messing with the volume settings. It all seemed fine. I thought maybe I should throw it away, but I just couldn't bear it to do that. It was one of the last items I had from my little brother. I just chalked it up to being some cheap kid's toy that wasn't working properly anymore. Right as I was about to put it away, a noise emitted from the device. This time, it was very different. A sound that it's almost impossible to forget. It began to cry. At first, it sounded like a very small whimper, but it began to grow louder and louder. Shocked, I dropped the walkie-talkie, and after I did, I noticed a small puddle of water surrounding the device where I had dropped it. The crying stopped. I stood there, not sure what to make of any of this. I couldn't move to react, but my mind was going faster than ever before. I picked it back up and noticed that there was water coming from the back of the walkie-talkie, where the batteries were located. I still didn't understand any of this, but I looked for any way to explain this. I thought maybe it was just the battery acid leaking out, or what if at some point without knowing it had gotten soaked? Maybe the day that I ran into the river to drag Colton out. That must be it, I thought to myself. It must have been It must have just gotten soaked that day, which would explain the static noise. Perhaps some water just got trapped into it. But what about the cry? How could I rationalize that? I just convinced myself that it wasn't a cry and that I was just hearing things. But if I was being honest with myself, it didn't just sound like any cry. It sounded like my little brother. I tried shaking it off and told myself that was impossible. I almost told my parents the following day, but I knew they would just look at me like a madman. I came so close to telling my therapist, but if I'm being honest, I don't like him much. He's boring, stale, and in all honesty, I don't like his advice. A few days later, I was at my desk again, browsing the internet, trying to look for any similar cases of specific walkie-talkie malfunctioning. Nothing that close to what I had encountered, especially not the crying part. I picked up the walkie-talkie to see if I could take it apart. Right as I touched it, something happened. A small voice sounding from the static cried, "Mikey, help me, please, help me." The voice continued, "Help me, Mikey, I can't swim." I pressed down on the microphone button and hard and yelled, "Whatever's doing this isn't fucking funny. This isn't some joke." That's when the most shrill scream blasted from the walkie-talkie speaker. In all my life, I had never heard something like this. Dropping the device, I ran into my dad's and mom's room. I didn't care how late it was. I figured they must have heard that noise, but no, they didn't. They told me that I must have been having a dream and that it was all from stress of Colton's death. They said I shouldn't feel guilty and that it wasn't my fault, that I just needed some rest. I told them that was all bullshit, and I knew what I heard. I tried showing them the walkie-talkie, but just like a classic trope, it didn't work in front of them. Not just in the way that I hoped, with like a crazy scream or all the talking, but the thing didn't even turn on. I thought maybe it had finally broken from all the times that I dropped it. I think talking more to your therapist will help, my father said, his voice laced with concern, but his eyes only showed disappointment. Dad, it's not like that. The thing literally was leaking the other day. Mike, will you stop? My father continued. I know you're going through a lot of pain. We all are. But please, I already have a dead son. I can't have a crazy one too. Though it was painful to hear, he was right. We did have a dead son. A crazy one only added to the list. That was just the cherry on top of an already horrific situation. I knew from then on that I was alone. Whatever was happening, I had to deal with it by myself. Weeks passed, and not a sound from the thing. I tried my best to fix it, but there was no use. Everywhere I went, I took the walkie-talkie with me in hopes that maybe it would work. At this point, school was back in, and my mind was finally beginning to detach itself, albeit from the incident. I was in math class when it happened, whatever it is. I was looking outside the class window and began to notice the rainfall and the condensation grow from the windows. That's when I heard something coming from my backpack. I thought maybe I had forgotten to turn my phone to silent. But then I realized my phone wasn't in my backpack, but instead in my right front pocket. The sound grew louder and louder, and in a panic, I threw open my book bag and saw the walkie-talkie was back on, fully functional. I was scared that others would hear it, because the sheer volume of the noise was ear-shattering. Though as I scanned the room, I realized that no one seemed to even take notice, almost as if they couldn't hear it. I even looked at the teacher, whose eyes met mine. Without even having to say anything, I knew what he was telling me. Get back to work. I turned the volume all the way down, thinking to myself, please, not right now, any time but now, to have this freak out in class in front of everyone. please, God, not right now. But of course, it happened. Mikey, help, please. Please, Mikey, help me. The voice was much clearer this time. I can't swim. Help me, help me, help me, help me, the voice blared. There was no way around it this time. I knew the voice. It was Colton. Colton, I screamed. I stood up and yelled into the device. I'm here, buddy. Hello, Colton. Everyone's head was now turned, looking at me as I stood there yelling over and over for my brother. Mr. Donovan, my teacher, began to speak, but I couldn't even hear him. All other sounds and voices were drowned out by my racing heart. I just ran. I ran as fast as I could out of the classroom and down the hall. That's when the camera turned on. Instead of a black screen, I could see something. I could see my brother in the water. He was panicking, arms flailing around, screaming for my help. I knew where to go, that damn river. I ran out of school and hopped onto my bike that was chained up in the bike area. I don't know how or why. I thought if I could get there in time, I could save him. I could somehow bring my brother back. I pedaled harder than even the first time. Colton, hang in there, I'm in my way, I yelled, my voice shaking and heavy for air. I practically fell off my bike when I reached the river. I raced down the small hill connecting the road and the grassy field. I ran all the way onto the riverbed. By this point, my body was soaked, drenched from all the rain. That's when I saw him. He was in the water, reaching out, screaming for me to help him. Mikey, jump in, grab me, I can't swim. I was about to dive in and save him when I took notice of something. This wasn't right. I knew that's obvious, but at the time, I thought I could really save him. I must have been going crazy or something, but I actually believed that I could save my already dead brother. The thing that stopped me, though, wasn't that I rationalized the situation in my head. I noticed something was different about him. His skin looked more pale, almost faint blue. His eyes were yellow like gold, and his teeth looked rotted and decayed. I stood there. He kept screeching, "Help me, damn it! You killed me, Mikey! Now jump in and save me! Fucking get in!" he demanded. His voice sounded lower. A lot lower. This was not coming from my 6-year-old brother. I stood there when he stopped. The water grew still and he was silent. I wonder if I was going to let him die again. This couldn't be real. I heard him start to laugh. I could barely make it out, but he was hysterically laughing underneath the water. I watched as air bubbles came up and the laughing grew louder and louder. I turned around and I run as fast as I could, straight up the hill into my bike. As I was about to hop on and haul ass away, I saw his head peeking out from the river. He somehow looked even worse. He yelled, "I'm coming for you, Mikey. I'm coming for you. You let me die. I'm coming for you." I got home and ran up to my room. I took off my wet clothes, but I was still shaking from the whole thing. None of this made any sense. I knew this couldn't be real, but what if? What if this was real and I wasn't crazy? What if somehow the ghost of my little brother wanted me dead? Could that even be possible? I never actually believed in ghosts or anything like that, but what I saw, that wasn't a ghost. That was something different, something darker. I feared something much worse. I knew my parents would probably find out from the school that I ran out of the class in a paranoid episode. I didn't care, though. None of that mattered now. The only thing that I could think about was what he meant by, "I'll be coming for you." Just then, static came from the walkie-talkie. I picked it back up and muttered a half-terrified, "Hello?" No response. I was about to put it down, but the screen came on. This time, I could see him clearly, underneath the water. But he looked even worse than before. He was rotting and falling apart. He looked like a dead, wet fish. Just from the visuals alone, I could only imagine how foul he must have smelled. "I'm coming for you, Mikey," he said. I'm coming for you. I slammed the walkie-talkie down. I decided then and there that I wasn't playing any fucking games anymore. I ran down to my dad's tool shed and got a hammer. I smashed the walkie-talkie into a million pieces. I didn't care if my dead brother gave it to me. I had to stop it. This couldn't go on any longer. With each smash of the hammer, I heard a cry, almost pain sound. With each blow, it sounded worse than before. I smashed it until there was practically nothing left. I knelt down and I cried. I cried my eyes out. I cried for my dead brother. I cried for my parents, and I cried for my lost mine. I finally got some rest that night. I don't know how. Maybe I was tired from all the running and racing on my bike, but I slept like a baby that night. My parents eventually had a sit-down meeting with me and my therapist. They implored for me to get on some medication, that I might be suffering from some sort of disorder. I tried telling them that I was all fine now, that I destroyed the walkie-talkie and the nightmare was over. None of them listened. Ever since then, I've been telling them that I've been taking my pills. In reality, I've just been flushing them down the toilet. I go and see my therapist almost every day after school. He's somehow grown even more uninterested in anything I say. I know that's his job, but damn does he look miserable. For a while, I thought that this hellish nightmare was over, that maybe destroying the walkie-talkie severed whatever connection was behind me and my already dead brother. Of course, I had been wrong. It was a week ago when it happened. I was about to take a bath. The stress from all of this was physically draining, so the thought of a warm, relaxing bath didn't sound too shabby. I sat there for a minute or so until I started to hear something. I heard a cry from the water. I jumped up, my naked wet body shivering as the air hit me. As I looked down, I could make out the face in the water. It looked like a reflection of someone or something. I looked closer and I saw Colton, his dead body. He looked worse than last time, now completely rotted with chunks of skin hanging from his once innocent, youthful face. He smiled, a big, rotten, almost toothless smile, and said, "Did you miss me, Mikey? I'm coming for you." I jumped right out, and as I did, I slipped and twisted my ankle. I got back up on my feet and dragged myself to my room, slamming the bathroom door shut. Luckily, nobody was home at the time with me. I put on some clothes and grabbed my baseball bat. I limped back to the bathroom and slowly opened the door. I looked down at my tub and noticed he was gone. No sign of him anywhere. Have I really lost my mind? I thought to myself, my heart still hammering in my chest. I didn't take a bath or shower for a whole week until I could tell others were offended by my smell. I know, it's gross, but I was terrified. Things didn't stop, though. Any time I was near a large body of water, I could see him. I would see him when I was at my friend's house in their backyards by their pool. I could hear him calling out for me over and over, how I let him die and how it was all my fault. Nobody could see him but me. Each day, he was more rotted than the last. I could smell him any time I opened a bottle of water. The stench would fill my nostrils, and the urge to puke almost overcame me. But I had to act normal. If my parents knew, well, who knows where they would ship me off to. That's what leads me here today. It's a Thursday, meaning both my parents are at work. It's been exactly 3 months since Colton died. I'm sitting here alone in my living room, writing this on my laptop. It's storming out tonight. The weatherman told everyone to stay indoors and keep your pets inside too. There could be some flooding. He was right. My whole backyard was flooding. Nothing too crazy, but enough for him to be right there. Right now, I see him standing outside the glass sliding door. I can smell his blue, rotting flesh from here. His skin is sliding off his little bones, falling apart like some sort of monster. He's standing there, looking at me, tapping the glass. I think he wants me to open it, to let him inside, to give out any justice I think he deserves. I think I'm going to open it now. I'm going to let my baby brother come in. It's time for all of us to be a family again.